It just means like a lot of rain, very high like winds, and definitely like quite a bit of damage and chaos, which
dope.
I kind of like.
All right, okay. Hello and welcome to Zero K, the podcast where we hit the highlights of the Urbit extended universe and go deep to interview some of the magnificent weirdos that are building Urbit, the decentralized operating system for the next 500 years. I'm poldec-tonteg, Shadow Minister of Taking Care of Business at the Urbit Foundation. I'm joined here by Nobel Peace Prize winner and Spirit Airlines Economy Plus Rewards member, roslet-tanner. Roslet, how are you doing today? And who are you?
I'm roslet-tanner. I'm doing really well. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're riding out the storm in beautiful California.
We have ridden out the storm. Our street was a sludge puddle for about 24 hours, but things are looking.
Have you done any looting? Any recreational looting?
Just not this time. It was just like a little too chaotic out there.
Steal an Instapot. I don't know what you do.
No, but it was actually like kind of a gnarly one.
Looter. No, I believe that. And you live in Oakland too, right? That's just
actually I'm like in South Berkeley. I'm one block from Oakland.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's totally different.
It is.
Sorry.
It's
Didn't mean to.
It's a little,
okay, so a little different. I know
yeah.
It's different. You could justify South Berkeley to me at some other point. So we're going to hit a few of these highlights, kind of what's been going on in the network. So the first up, I just came back from the Volcano Summit. That was the big news the last few weeks. For those of you that don't know, there was a summit that was mostly geared towards contributors and people that are building stuff on Urbit, invite only, on top of a volcano in lovely El Salvador, probably the most memed country going right now. I mean, probably, right? Why weren't you there, Rosalind?
I don't know. At this point, I'm like really jealous. I have reverse FOMO, not reverse FOMO. I have latent FOMO.
Delayed FOMO? Yeah. Retroactive FOMO.
I'm sad. I heard it was really, really great. I mean, everyone I've talked to has been like super excited about it. Not only because like great people in a beautiful environment, but also just like a really, really good program. So it sounds like it was a huge hit. Like, really good.
I think so. It's funny that there's like I saw a few. It's interesting because I was there, and then you see people talking about it on social media. And, it's sort of like one thing was like, there's no girls, which is like, it's just like you can say that about all urban events, But
this one was especially no girl, right? I don't think there actually were no girls, I think, this time.
No. There were 3 girls.
Nice.
I want to shout them out right now, okay? Because this is how committed I am to International Women's Day. And we celebrated International Women's Day there,
nice.
So like that's something. Let's see. So let's see. Sizzle, who works for Gigacorp. So she's involved in funding crypto projects and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. There was Joie, who is a developer who works on the Quorum team. Quorum, look out for Quorum, everybody. It's kind of like a Stack Overflow type deal, integrated with groups. They're integrating it right now. So that's good. And then there's a woman whose name I did not get, but she came to ETH Denver. The Urbit vibes were so strong that she bought a ticket to come to El Salvador.
That was like her first interaction with Urbit.
That was her first interaction. So I'm like, I don't know. That's got to be worth something. So yes, few women, but all of them godlike, So that's so anyway, but it was good. But and then the big thing that was interesting about this, as opposed to like assembly, we've had these things before, and they're always a great time. But what's interesting here is like going into it, there was a little bit, I hesitate to call it drums, but it was kind of like drums on there's a debate.
About what?
There's a discourse happening on the social medias. And it was like, basically that's just Tiprel, an engineer who I have an interview with coming up in a future episode, who works for Ukbar, great guy, man after my own heart. Tried to explained to me that the Earth was expanding, the expanding Earth theory. I'm like, bro, I know about. Are you kidding? I invented expanding Earth.
Duh.
But he's sort of like a Web 1. He's pro Web 1. He's like Web 1 had some great stuff about it, blah blah. And we should be like looking back at kind of what was good about Web 1 when we're talking about building stuff for Urbit. which is also hilarious because he's like 23 years old. Like, bro, I was there. Which is great to see. But anyway, so that was kind of his point, right? And then you have the people that are kind of like more on the holium side, on the Tlon side, on the I think that's kind of sums it up. But a lot of people who are kind of more like, let's actually focus on replacing all these utilities from Web 2, because that's sort of like an easier entry point, as opposed to like, hey, welcome to Urbit. It's, 1997, which sounds cool to me, but some people might not, vibe with as much. So that was kind of like the debate a little bit and going back and forth on Twitter. But it was interesting because like that whole dynamic, I think, was really fruitful, and really kind of like you saw that at the summit, so everyone's bros and everyone just talks, but it was like interesting because I mean, the real thing that I think is interesting is that people are discussing what the best way to use Urbit should be. And like, I like that it's expanding the scope about like what that can be and not pretending like it's obvious, for lack of a better term. Right. It's just like, we don't know. Like, let's just try a whole bunch of stuff and iterate, which I like that energy.
I mean, I think like, you and I have been around Urbit for some years now. And it's really, I mean, honestly, it is like very refreshing to see like the conversation expanding beyond sort of, you've always had sort of like factions, but they were like, entrenched in maybe like two particular ideologies. And I feel like things are really opening up and like becoming much more interesting. I mean, for it to work, you need like all types of ideas, all types 100%. Of people. So it's 100%. It's good to see.
It's a sign of life. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really good to, I mean, it's so funny because you get that thing where it's like, oh, on the one hand, people think, oh, you should present a united front. But on the other hand, it's good for it to be a little messy, because like people are excited and they're bought in, so people are like arguing about, some things are technical, some things are more UX design, but it's just cool to see because it means people are invested. And that's like the thing that I think is really just the most important indicator.
I think too, like there's always going to be some like element of like slightly irate discourse.
Of course.
People are just like so emotional and passionate about it. And so that's always going to happen. It would be like sad and depressing if it was like people didn't feel strongly about it.
100%. It's also it's like Urbit Lindy to just have shouting matches about obscure topics.
Of course.
Right? It's like, we've all been there. I mean, I'm not sure if you ever saw some of the like, you probably saw some showdowns in the Tlon office, but there's just been, it's an amazing.
I mean, when I first joined, I was like, okay, non-technical, very little understanding of like what all was going on, like under the hood. But I did know that the engineers spent most of the day shouting at each other in the office kitchen.
Yes.
So I knew there was something there.
There's something. That's how the magic happens. It really does.
It's honestly true.
It's true.
Yeah. Those are the good old days.
Yes. I mean, so it was in El Salvador, which is my first time. And El Salvador's is like, the way I was trying to explain it is it's kind of like someone put a volcano in the middle of San Diego. Like that's what it looks like. It's really just like the climate is very much like Southern California along the coast. So it's kind of interesting, you're just like there, you're like, you feel like you just gone in a circle kind of, but it was like super easy to get there.
Is it like dry or is it tropical-y?
Drier than I thought it was going to be. So I think it's like in the dry season. I mean, not like dry, but like it wasn't like, I was honestly like,
I kind of thought it was like
the zip off pants and like a safari hat, So
mosquito netting. Yeah.
That's exactly.
That's what I always thought.
The hat with the mosquito net. But that was not, apparently not necessary. So when I was wearing it, people were like, what do you do? No. But like,
honestly, I would believe it with your overalls.
Oh, for sure, dude. Yeah. I came equipped. I just want you to know. I was wearing rayon. I had I think I told you I had pink eyes. So I also had like blood red eyes. Ooh. So I was like walking around El Salvador just like with blood red eyes. Wearing all rayon. But so I blended right in. But El Salvador's great. I mean, great. Just like so accessible. Like it took me like I flew from Dallas and I think the whole thing took me from Kansas City took me like maybe 4 hours to get there.
Oh, wow.
I mean, like not really, that can't be true, but more like 5 hours maybe. But it was like really just not that bad at all. And it was interesting because like, as soon as I got off the plane, people were like talking about how great Nayib Bukele is. It's just like, it's for real that this man is the talk of the town, because it's like El Salvador is basically one town, so it's like just this like little tiny vibe. The first thing they said was like pupusas. I was like,
exactly.
Yeah, I had a pupusa before. Thank you very much. And I tweeted at Nayib Bukele. I was like, what is the traditional El Salvador music? He's yet to get back to me. So if you're listening to this, Nayib, like, get at me.
Still waiting.
I was trying to like pump El Salvadoran culture, but it was kind of like pupusas. I was like, okay, Bitcoin. Paying for pupusas with Bitcoin though, it's like it's not bad.
No,
it's not a bad thing.
It's unique.
It is unique.
It's its own thing. And
it's like it's funny because like for what it like, there's certain amounts of it where you're like, oh, it's kind of like being in LA in a lot of ways actually, because there's a lot of El Salvadorans in LA. So it's like I'm in El Sereno. Like I used to live here basically. But the thing that's really interesting about it is like, there's definitely that feeling where like things are changing. You know what I mean? Like everyone was like so stoked that there were tourists, that there were foreigners coming in, that they felt safe. And it was very safe.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that. No, you didn't ever have any like, I think
nothing even close.
Almost everywhere in the world gets such a bad rap around safety. Like,
yeah.
Scared.
Well, I mean, this was like, I think they like legit was, it legit was scary.
For real.
But I mean, now, I was talking to a taxi driver who said like when he grew up, they didn't go outside in San Salvador after like 8 p.m. Like he just had never gone outside, which is just an insane thing. And he's just like, and you think about all this stuff. It's like restaurants can stay open, like all this stuff. And so I don't know. It was cool. It was like special in that way. Cause it's like, we were doing this thing, futuristic, Urbit, blah, 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 whatever. And they were also like, oh, it's like you see all these people that for the first time see that they can change their life, in some basic way, which is really inspiring. It's like, I wish I felt that about the United States of America, right? But you go there like, oh my God, that's so cool that you could do that. I don't exactly feel that way about the United States.
No, we're on the other side of that.
Yeah, exactly. Everything's been changed.
Yeah. But like, it'll be interesting to see like how the economy continues to grow and like how people's quality of life improves. And if it's like a steady like trajectory, or if hopefully it's not one of those sort of like short-lived, it's hot for a minute, but it doesn't really seem like it. It seems like it's really attracting a lot of people.
Yeah. Like a lot of the Urbit bros live there. There's like a decent Urbit bro presence.
In my mind, all the Urbit guys live like in a tree house together.
Basically, they live in like the equivalent of like a Hollywood Hills style house.
Really?
It's really awesome, actually. Wow. It's very nice. But also it's one of those things where it's kind of like they don't really seem to have developed like that much of an anti-foreigner sentiment, which you do see in other, like when you go, like if you go, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go move to Mexico City and like
trash the place,
open a pour over coffee place.
Right.
It's like, there's going to be some pushback, but they don't really have any opinions one way or the other. So it's sort of interesting to see like how, and like a lot of the Urbit guys and the Aleph DAO people like Nilrun and Rovnus, of course, have made a lot of inroads there. We've got connections so that in the business community and stuff. So it's really cool. So it's like the people who live there are like legit putting down at least commercial roots, which is really cool to see. Okay. So second item here, we do have the Urbit Foundation, as I'm sure roslet-tanner does have several opportunities to learn Hoon or, the stack in general. So we have Hoon School Live and we have a new school starting up called App Workshop Live. So Roslet, I think you mentioned that you are a Hoon School dropout, as am I.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I failed out.
We were ejected, but has nothing to do with, I also failed. But I've been writing Hoon since like several versions of Hoon ago. So I feel like I could just rest on my laurels, which is kind of what I'm all about.
You don't have to prove yourself.
I don't exactly. So that all that has nothing to do with the instructor Lagrav Nakfep, who is superb. Like
Yeah.
Neil is an amazing teacher,
Mhm.
and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there are several people. I mean, like a good percentage of the graduates of Hoon School that have never programmed before. So
That's
if anyone's
crazy.
listening to this, yeah, I mean, it's which is crazy. And it's interesting. It's like, if you do Hoon, you kind of understand. It's like, oh, you could just go from like literally nothing to being a pretty proficient Hooner.
Mhm.
And Neil's really good at that kind of stuff because he has taught computer science like in general before. So he can kind of like give you the from zero type thing.
Well, also
So
like that's
now
so
might be the time for you.
for me. No.
Learn to code.
I think the ship has sailed.
If this podcasting thing doesn't work out.
Yeah, we're on the cutting edge here. So that's really interesting because it kind of indicates that obviously these aren't people that are just looking to do development and programming like just generally. They're here for Urbit.
Yeah.
Only.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, which I think is,
that's kind of wild.
I mean, that's kind of that it is wild, and I think it's how it should go, right?
Mhm.
Because it's like, what's the option, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to learn how to program so I can make some money. It's like, that's cheesy. That's a corny thing to do,
extremely cheesy.
right? And it's just like everybody who's, I mean, at least in my experience, everyone who ends up being a decent programmer has like an approach to it that's more than simply utilitarian. You know, they
Mhm.
like doing it. They like doing it. They like working with the people that they work with. The Urbit community is very like, being an Urbit developer, I will go on record saying this, is more fun than being any kind of developer, right?
Mhm.
Because like just the community, the vibes, the possibility, all this stuff. It's like, you're not going to find that in like the Ruby community that's, going through a forum to try to fix healthcare.gov. It's like, that's not what we're doing, right? And so I think a lot of people are attracted to that, and I think that it's cool that the foundation has been able to train those people up. And I'll talk a little bit more about our metrics around that in a little bit because they're pretty impressive actually.
Well, I just want to say, this is my first exposure really to like the tech industry. I like came from a completely different background. And my experience working with engineers obviously varied because I've worked with many of them, like some in close contact, some not at all. But it's actually been mind blowing to me how important community is to them. Like kind of across the board. Like it's, like this is nothing like the sort of like generic sort of pop culture version of what people think an engineer is or how they would work. Like it's just completely different. I think like it would be, I can't imagine like going and working in a different sort of world with different type of engineers. Like I think it would be shocking because I'm used to this now. Like I'm used to like people that like really care about the community and are extremely engaged in the community and they do it because they like it. And there are certain like really nuanced things they love to do and some things that they refuse to do. And
there are some complications, but I mean, I 100% agree. It's like, I was telling someone the other day, it's like when I got onto Urbit, there were like 10 people on Urbit. It just, and we all worked on Urbit and it's never really changed from that. It's like one of those, that's like the thing that I think a lot of people look forward to, a day when there's people that just use Urbit and they don't care about Urbit, right? They just get the benefit. But still, and I think we do benefit from, it's like everyone is like into it, right? And so we don't have a lot of freeloaders, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So there are benefits. And then the other school this is a new one actually. So Hoon School has been going for a long time. I mean, at this point for a pretty decent amount of time. And we have a new one called App Workshop Live. So that is a school that focuses on, so Hoon is just a programming language, right? But building a full app that goes from like, thinking of the application to building a front end, getting it to users, all that stuff. That is a little bit more of an involved thing. And so App Workshop Live kind of takes you through that full life cycle. So it's for people that have already gone through Hoon School Live. And that is a new one. So I don't think I said the date. So Hoon School Live starts on the 28th. So soon. It's the 22nd today. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So starts on March 28th, and then App Workshop Live, a little urban
Sorry about
urban
that.
flavor. So the hurricane police showed up. The App Workshop Live starts on April 14th.
Is there like a cap to the number of people that can apply, or do you know?
Generally, I don't think so, but don't hold me to that.
Okay.
Signups are ongoing for both of these, and I'll put the links in the show notes. But I know that we usually get up, I think in the mid 100, like 150 something.
Damn.
But yeah, it's not. This is real. This is not a drill.
I'm
and
shunked.
a decent. Yeah, you shook. Yeah. So I mean that's exciting stuff, and I think everyone who's listening to this should definitely check it out. That kind of leads into point number 3, which is the foundation, specifically the executive director, Wolrich Podlex, has recently been doing a lot of work on just metrics in general, because one of the good and bad things about Urbit is like you actually have no idea who's using it or if they're using it, right? And so so he just put up a whole bunch of user metrics on network.urbit.org that I think everyone should take a look at. But what's cool is that the methodology that he used, it shows how many people are retained and how many people are churning. So how many people leave and how many people there's like, I think at least retained, churned, and then like reactivated. So people who come back after being gone for, I forget how long it was, like a month or something. And it's really cool to see, right? Because I think it's one of those things where, I mean, you've used Urbit. There's lots of, sometimes it's a little bit of an unpredictable system. And so it's like one of those things where you want to make sure people aren't just like coming and then something goes wrong and they bounce.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's been really cool to watch that. And so like, you know, the graph, I'm happy to report the graph is the correct shape, which means it is going up, I guess, and to the right. To the right, yes.
That's right. Yes, you want it to.
Yeah,
the
which
right.
is good. That's like up and to the right, and that includes all the retained people. And so there's a lot of stuff going into that.
I'm excited to look at that.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, and it's worth looking at because you know there's colors. You can click some stuff and.
Well, I'm looking forward to checking that out. That's like good for him getting that pulled together. That's
100%, 100%. Because I think you got to tell, you got to let people know what's happening. That's been a problem since day one, right? Like, how do you surface what's going on? Because Urbit is like this little parallel universe, right? And so, how do you do that? I mean, like you do it just by lurking on various groups, right? And just
correct. Yes,
yeah,
I'm a master lurker. I'm actually always there.
You are.
People don't think I am, but I definitely am.
Just shaking your head.
I'm just like
I would not. Expect nothing less. She is in the dad's group though. So if anyone joins Dad Internet,
yeah, that's the best parent group.
It is the best parent group. I'm sorry, Mom Internet. Dad Internet is.
And by the way,
superior parent.
I think that I earned my position in the dad's group.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. You have the most. I mean, maybe the oldest child in the group, so you know the most.
He just turned 18, so yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
For context, noble listener, we are exactly the same age. We were born on the same day.
Of the same year.
Of the same year,
yes.
like literally the same day. And my son is 5, so Coco has a lot more experience than I do. So keep that in mind, gentle listener, when I give you any life advice. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
I mean,
yeah,
it's a miracle that we've gotten as far as we have. Truly,
it's true. It really is a marvel. So the fourth point I wanted to bring up is like so. The Kelvin versioning system, roslet-tanner. Do you know what that is?
Not really.
Okay, I like that you're about to make.
I was gonna try to say like, oh yeah, like I understand like the broad, but no.
Okay. Let me just. All right. So Urbit, one of the interesting things about Urbit is we version backwards, so we go down instead of going up. So I can't look now, but Chrome on your computer is version like literally 35. I don't know how many, 35.7.2 point whatever. So we go down. So right now we are on various parts of the system have various versions, but we go down. And the meaning of this podcast title 0K is that's the goal, is because once things hit 0, it's over. It's done. Dunzo. And so Urbit, one of the many reasons Urbit is unique because we're trying to finish this thing. We're trying to just like be done. I have other things to do. I have a whole second career as I don't know, rancher. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I think you should.
Close-up magician. I don't know what to do. But whatever. I'll do that later.
That one.
Wait, what would yours be? Actually, now that
I mean, honestly, I think like I did, farm nature experience for many years, and now I'm doing like urban, and
nature farm.
I want to go back. So
okay, so
I think it would just
layabout.
No, well, yeah, but mostly like I want to get chickens again. I'd like to have goats again. That would be my second/third career.
No, that's good. So goat herd.
Goat herd. Good. That's right.
I think that's a good one. Anyway, I did that. That was my tangent. So the versioning system goes down. So coming up this week, in a matter of days, 401 or sorry, 414, Kelvin 414 is going to be released, and that's decrementing the Kelvin version another Kelvin. And so when we decrement a Kelvin, that means that it's usually when there's a major update. So in this case, what's coming down the pipe is an 8 gig loom. I can tell by your silence that you're excited.
What is a loom?
What is a loom? A loom. So Urbit, when an Urbit chip starts, it only has so much memory that it can work with, and it does that because it's like there's lots of reasons, but it only has a limited amount of memory. 2 gigs is not that much memory, right? So we could probably all there are. I'm sure there are Instagram stories that are bigger than 2 gigs, right? It's like one of those things where it's like this, it's an absurdly low amount of memory. And mostly what Urbit does is like, doesn't take that much memory, right? Cause like little strings of text and numbers and shit, it just doesn't take any memory. But so the making the loom bigger has been a long standing thing because it's actually difficult to do and takes a lot of deep work. And so it going to 8 gigs is quite a bit. So it was at 2 and now it's going to go to 8. And what that means is you can basically put more stuff, more junk in your Urbit.
And that's going to be like standard because I do know like some people, like you said, not everyone runs out of space, but some people do. And it becomes like really problematic for their ships. Everything gets laggy and buggy and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is going to be everybody. So that's going out very soon. Barter Simpson, which is one of the best pet peeves out there right now. Yeah, really good. Who's an engineer at the foundation, did all this work. And so it's been really good stuff. And I think it's his first big feature to ship to the network. So that's pretty cool.
It's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. So I mean, a lot of people have dealt with this limitation on Urbit without knowing it, right? When you have to like, set up an S3 bucket to hold files or something like that. That's usually because you don't want to put those big files in your Urbit because it takes up all the space. So we're moving in the direction of that being less of a concern, which is really like, it's people like to put big ass files in their computers. I think that's been proven.
That's what we do.
It's what people like to do. People don't like to throw shit away. Right. So it's like, so this is like, I don't think this is the full Shrek trilogy that you could put in here, but this is, I think, at least one Shrek. So when we talk about like big files, the internal joke, Roslet, is we say, how many Shreks? A Shrek is like a unit of size. So this is like a 2 Shrek limit, maybe. Please clap.
I'm clapping.
Clapping for you. So that release is coming out in the next few days. I will put the release notes. There's a few other little things in there as well. I'll put the release notes in the show notes, and you can read those at your leisure. So next up, we have an interview that I did in El Salvador with one hodzod-walrus, who is one of Uqbar's top guys. So Uqbar, if you guys don't know, I've got another company building on Urbit that's building a ZK rollup, a native ZK rollup to Urbit, which is a lot of letters that are very exciting, but they're doing some really cool stuff. And they're also just contributing a lot of great stuff to the network. So check out Akbar. We're going to discuss in this interview, we're going to discuss a lot of the work he's doing on databases and persistence, trying to make it so that it's easier to iterate on apps and hopefully make things that are more useful for people quicker. So that's all we've got for today. Roslet, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to hear your interview. Looking forward to checking out those metrics.
It's
Talk
good.
to you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. See ya.
Bye.
How, bring me up to speed. Like how did you like hear the name Urbit? Give me the little bit of the backstory.
Right.
Like
Full
the first time you
history.
heard Urbit to here.
Full history. All right. Well, I was looking at Hacker News. I was very online.
Are you joking right now?
No,
Okay.
I'm not joking at all.
Okay, all
I
right.
know. I was like on Hacker News, like probably like freshman year of college. Saw something like 2017, like people posted Urbit stuff. People were trying to dunk on it in the comments. And already at that point, that was a signal of, oh, this could be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But I think the first time I heard the name, I brushed over it and went to the next article.
Yeah.
And then again in 2020, when like OS 1, the first version of Landscape was released, I saw it again, probably Hacker News again. And at that point, I had gotten really into like functional programming. So I was like learning a lot about like Haskell, and I was still in college, still studying CS, and I thought like a functional operating system was just like the coolest idea ever.
Yeah.
So then I got into like the docs, and I went to urbit.org. And at the time, like it was very, very esoteric. So like mid 2020, I was also like sitting in my house all day. I had nothing else to do, right?
Was this when the home screen was just a video of the ocean?
Yes. Okay. I love that image.
I just talked to Drew about this.
It's a beautiful
It
image.
really is.
Like,
It really is.
and that kind of hooked me because I was looking for meaning, you know? I was gearing up to like basically get a FANG job.
Yeah.
And I was looking for something better because the idea of going into that world really depressed me.
Yeah.
So Urbit jumped out as like, this is just way, way better.
Yeah, and it's not that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it's like, so you were probably looking at, you weren't thinking like startup-y stuff. You were thinking more just like, let's just go get a job.
No, and I really liked the fact that everybody, including like just the docs, seemed to be like not catering to the lowest common denominator. Because I had learned other programming languages. I had recently done the Rust book. Mm-hmm. So I had learned Rust to the beginner degree, and everything was made with the intention of like, sort of like dumbing things down and saying anyone can do it. Yeah. And at that point in my like programming journey, I was just recently coming to a strong opinion that like, no, not anybody can do this. Yeah. And in fact, a world where anybody can do this means like the quality of the programs is probably going to be pretty bad. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's no shame to anyone, but it's like, it's a pretty like weird and like life-consuming thing. Yeah. Like to be like really into like programming, especially like systems programming, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, so there's a certain way at which making things, it becomes, I find it kind of insulting if things are like almost too like, and it's also just very rarely possible actually, right? Because it's just like not everyone really wants to.
So I was disappointed with like the nature of my college coursework that was like that. And so to see Urbit as this thing where like people weren't holding your hand and I just had to like figure it out for myself, like that was really cool. So, and then I actually got on the network. I got a planet. I started like joining groups. I became friends with, Dachis was one of the first guys that I met on Urbit. Yeah. We started talking.
Dachis is now a coworker at Akbar.
Yeah. Our paths have like, crossed and stayed together. Yeah, it's pretty tight. It's pretty cool.
That's really
cool.
It's like
tight, cool.
Both tight and cool.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'd say this a lot, but it's just like, when I got into this, right, it was also very esoteric and whatever, but like the idea of someone going just from college, both you and Dachis just went from college into working full time on Urbit, which is like an inconceivable thing when I was getting into it. You know? So it's just so heartening to see that. Right. And it's like, that's what you want the future to be like. It's like people are like, Fangu. It's like you can go work at all the other places or you can go work for Urbit. And that's like, that's really nice to see, I think. And
I mean, I'm so happy. Like I feel like I have my dream job right now, you know, because I was also into crypto. I was like very into Bitcoin and then Ethereum and then like, you know, probably if I didn't find Urbit and start working on Urbit, I would have gone the Solidity smart contract dev route. But I'm thankful I'm into Urbit because like the functional part of the programming, like I've always, you know, that to me, it works really well. So now that I get to like bring that to smart contracts via like Uqbar, like that's pretty awesome. I'm very happy.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us, you know, who get to work on this full time, it's like, it is a huge blessing. It's like, there are a lot of worse things you could do, right? So we're definitely lucky in that regard.
Yeah, and the second or third guy I like really met was like Tim Luck. Right. So then he was
who's now the head of Uqbar.
Yeah. But he was my mentor. I got a grant to do, and I probably like talked to you and Tim, and then I did start on like a poker grant, and that's when I actually really learned like Hoon and stuff. And it was very challenging and very engaging. That was like over the summer, and that was really fun. And then after that, started like working full time. That's basically great.
Yeah. So I mean, so the main thing that that you're working on right now, right, is kind of like adding some more capability to how Urbit applications deal with data, basically, right? So can you kind of run people through how an Urbit application deals with data right now? Like what's the default way of doing it?
Yeah. So I've like spent all my time in user space. I don't really know much about core development. I'm learning this week, but
actually just explain that distinction also.
Right. Okay. So there's the Urbit OS, there's the kernel, and core development, like there's a team, it's got a long running history and big things are changing right now, which is really awesome. And but I have not spent much time in that at all. And I want to at some point. It's very cool. So I've spent all my time in building apps on top of the OS. So that's like a Gall app, right? Gall is like the user space app paradigm for Urbit. And Gall apps are basically, sort of singular applications that have a state and they accept like pokes, they make and subscribe to paths, and it's a way to build anything you want on top of Urbit. So, you know, social apps, you know, Uqbar, crypto wallet, stuff like this, like all of these are Gall apps.
Anything that a user would probably click on, right? As opposed to the underlying stuff, which they hopefully don't have to see.
Right?
And so like the data in a Gall app, right? So it's like that is referred to as a state machine, right? So it's like you have some state that could be like a list of numbers, like a list of your phone contacts.
Right.
And so you poke it with some action and it updates to include the new phone number, for example. So explain that
Gall app states are persistent and developer defined, right?
Okay.
So you have like some data structure that you write, and this is like the first thing you do when you start writing a new application. You're like,
a to-do app.
What's the state of this app look like? What actually gets saved in like the Urbit like memory, right? And so this is really fun because basically, if you write this well, your whole app flows out of it, right? But the state of a Gall app, I guess I can just talk about like, it's easiest to talk about the changes and options. So Gall app states like basically like it can be anything you want right now. So oftentimes you have to like, if you want to understand a Gall app, you have to understand what it's storing in state. And that can be bespoke because every developer does it their own way and they define their own thing. And then the other thing is like, if a Gall app like gets nuked, which is the official terminology, right? If your app gets nuked, you lose your state and then you have to restart and have a fresh state to begin making transitions on the state machine that is the app. So that has, that can be a pain point, for users. You'll note, like, if you uninstall an app right now on Urbit, you don't nuke the app. You just suspend it. So if you reinstall it again, you basically, like, rehydrate that original state.
Yeah.
And what if that's super stale? Then you have all these other things. So a lot of people have discussed the concept of like a stateless agent, which would be like a Gall app that doesn't really hold state and just is like sort of an interface, and the state gets stored somewhere else, which by the way is also just a Gall app, right?
Yeah.
So,
And so that's sort of more similar to how apps on other environments are. So how does it, like if you were to write a to-do app just using the normal stuff that comes on Mac OS, like how would you do it? Just give it kind of a comparison, basically.
Yeah, so you would basically, you'd use like something like the file system, right? And like that would be your like state, right? And the to-do app itself, every time you closed it, it wouldn't save anything really, because like, you know, more or less, like the app itself is stateless. It may, and then I can get into some other things. I have a paradigm of state, but like, a to-do app on a like a Mac OS, like you'd close it, it would wipe everything, right? You'd open it back up, it would like look to the file system to see the to-do apps, the to-do lists you had stored.
So like the state of the app could be as simple as just a file, literally just a file on your machine.
Exactly.
Right? And so
or a folder,
or a folder. So like in Urbit, the application developer has to write that all themselves every time.
Exactly.
Which is like a lot of states are very similar or the same stuff, right? So there's a lot of duplication.
Yeah, so like a to-do app on Urbit, you'd start by saying like, okay, what's the state of this app that's gonna be persistent? Okay, maybe it's a mapping of like an ID to a note, and then a note is like a data type that I designed that has like a title, a timestamp, and then a contents, you know, and then maybe links to other notes apps. Like, so you could do really cool stuff in that regard. But yeah, now it lives inside your app, and now like if another app wants to compose on that and like they want to take the notes that you made in this app and then like maybe, I don't know, share them with other people, turn it into a collaborative document or something, your app has to support that by having like a path at which this app can scry in, grab this note, and then maybe an API to make edits, save changes within this app state.
Yeah.
So one option. Well, let me talk about, so I view there to be like 3 main types of state that live in an app.
So just a second, can you kind of like walk back and be like, when you say composability, just give a sort of like just toy example of what you mean by, I mean, I think you kind of did a little bit, but just, because people say that a lot about Urbit, like this is going to allow composable apps, like just be really kind of like ELI5 about this. What does that mean?
Composability is definitely a word you have to define because otherwise it gets away from you. I view it as just, and I always, these days, I always put the word permissionless in front of it.
Okay, just because.
That's my full buzzword. Because composability means that other people can build their app on top of your app.
Yeah.
Like, again, the Notes app. You're holding a note in its state. This app wants to edit that note, share it with other people, remix it, whatever. Like, that's basically a Lego that sits on top, and those two things have a tight coupling, and that's an interface. And that's in the traditional like computer world, that's like an API. So Twitter has like an API, right? And other people want to compose on it, and they have to pay Twitter a bunch of money now.
Okay, that's a good example,
So Twitter, I would say, is not really composable. It's definitely not permissionlessly composable. So that's why I always put permissionless in front, because you can get composability, but in a not very useful way. So with Urbit, I want to make as many apps as possible permissionlessly composable, where yes, you can build on top like a Lego brick, slotting in, and you don't even have to like communicate or negotiate with the original app's developer, because the stuff is just sitting there.
And I mean, fair, it's on your ship. That's like the whole paradigm is that all that application data is yours, is in your instance, and so you should be able to do with it whatever you please and not have to have a negotiation with these different
Absolutely. So this gets into the 3 kinds of state that I think about. So one is like real, like deep state.
This is good. All right.
That's like in a Node app, that's the actual contents of the node. Okay. Then you have configuration state. This is like settings. Like maybe you want to use the app in dark mode or light mode. That's a configurational state. It's a toggle, right? Okay. And then there's ephemeral state. Maybe you have like a pending action that's like waiting to be processed, and it only lives in like the actual app state for like a second or two as it's like pending, and then it goes away.
Interesting.
So configuration state and ephemeral state are always going to live in the Gall app because they're basically operational, right? And it's okay if you nuke that.
Yeah.
Because ephemeral state is just going to be empty anyway if you're not using the app actively. So go ahead and nuke that. And then config state's like, okay, you lose your preference for light mode or dark mode.
Yeah.
Okay, we can live with that, right? That's the kind of stuff that you would lose, like in in the traditional app, where it's like, okay, unless it saves it to the file system.
So that's interesting though, because it's almost like you define it based on the cost of losing it a little bit, right?
Yes.
So it's like losing the deep state, as we all know, would be a disaster, right?
Yes.
So, but the other stuff, if it were to go away, it's like to the user, it's like they would maybe note it a little bit, but it's really and you can get it back out, or you can reinstitute it, and it wouldn't be a problem.
It's also relevant for composability, because the configuration and ephemeral states are not really relevant to composability.
To another app using that same
Exactly.
data.
It's the deep state that you want to be permissionlessly accessible.
Okay, that's
so
nice.
This gets into like, how do we make that happen?
Yeah, so
right?
how do we have shared deep state?
Yeah.
It's kind of
So I want to take that kind of state like out of the Gall app and put it into like a data store. And this gets into like this recent project, this relational database.
Does it have a sexy code
Yeah,
name?
I call it Nectar.
Okay, Nectar.
Nectar,
Good.
yeah.
Going against the 4-letter, being a contrarian among contrarians, I like that.
Well, all the good 4-letter names have been used.
Yeah, that's good. You're kind of grasping now. Yeah. Okay. All right. So Nectar is this new project to build basically a data store that would be able to be used by multiple agents.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And
Multiple
this has been done
applications.
before too. I mean, GraphStore was like this.
Okay, so explain what GraphStore is.
GraphStore was a backend built by Tackrite, Socrite, and it's basically like a place to store linked, nested, content, right? Text mostly. So you had like a fairly generic but opinionated like nesting structure for posts, messages, things of this nature. That's what it was built for. And this was the backend for the groups one, right?
Yeah.
This is the original backend. And, GraphStore embodied this because it had an agent and it had an API. So you were adding nodes to your personal text graph, you were removing nodes, and it was accessible from other apps.
Yeah.
And you did see people build stuff on top of this, So GraphStore is still in the Urbit core, like it's installed by default. So I was thinking that just for full generality, I wanted to make a just relational database.
Okay.
And this is like one of these like great innovations of like Earth computer science.
I gotta just be. Yeah. It's important that everyone understand, right? That sort of like, Urbit. Part of the culture is, of course, this contrarianness, which makes you too often kind of like blind to things that were good from the old world, where it's like some things actually they just worked,
Yeah.
So it's like, relational databases are one of those things where it's
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you give me an apologia for the relational database.
Absolutely. So I think it's basically as close as you can get to like sort of like a mathematical truth in data representation. Because like you have this fundamental concept of like tabular data.
Okay.
Like there's a concept of like a piece of data that has multiple like things within it, and those things like you're gonna hold many of them.
Yeah.
That's like sort of like very straightforward. It's almost it's intuitive.
Yeah.
And we find ourselves like constantly like replicating these things. I mean, basically a map is like this.
Yeah.
And, one thing I've heard is like, like people in the modern era, and this is like on Earth as well, like a lot of apps nowadays, like basically like also like want to get away from like the relational model and move into like a key value store model.
Yeah.
And one of the big reasons for that is like performance actually, because like MySQL databases are like they get criticized for like performance versus like just like a key value store, like a data lake they're calling it, unstructured data, because but that is specifically because Earth apps are trying to scale to millions or billions of users, and you can't put a billion like items in a table without sort of like getting this really difficult optimization problem or like. Yeah.
Well, that's the fundamental distinction we have to remember is like everything that we're talking about would be basically for one user.
Exactly.
Right? As opposed to like all of the tweets from everyone
Right.
from all time,
Right.
just your tweets, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually makes a lot of things. It just changes the constraints, right? So there's certain things that would seem completely insane to do for billions of users, but for one user, it's tractable, right?
I still have to correct myself when I'm writing an app and I'm thinking about an operation and I think, oh, this operation needs to be fast because it's going to happen a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, I maybe need to make some trade-offs or, compromises to make that fast. And it turns out that it doesn't have to be fast because, it's going to happen a lot of times, but from one person.
Yeah. Like how many chat messages can one person send?
Exactly.
It's like it's very
you could send one chat message a second for the rest of your life and still be like in a performant box. Right?
Yeah. 100%.
So
you have to unlearn that stuff. It's funny. I was talking to Datches about this. It's like so many of our assumptions around process and architecture come from these centralized systems.
Yeah.
So you're used to thinking about, well, I'm going to have a zillion users. Or how am I? Well, but you could still have a zillion users, but they would be each on their own Urbit.
Yeah.
So the performance profile looks totally different.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, so basically, Nectar is an Urbit specific relational database for this particular use profile. So how's it being used right now? I mean, I think you're using it in a product.
Yeah. So the first thing I did was like sketch this out, get some basic queries working and doing some performance testing. And like, just like with a normal SQL table, like as long as you do a intelligent schema, like you index on the right keys and you cluster the keys, performance is fantastic. You can query 1 million records in like, microseconds.
Yeah.
Because map operations are jetted, you're using a smart like data representation, it works. So I made that. I basically haven't touched it since. Like it's very much a just like MVP, proof of concept type thing. I also I want to like basically not make it too big because I buy into the idea that like in order for people to want to build on top of your stuff, it has to be like credibly sort of static. Like you can't push breaking changes.
Adding all this stuff all the time. Yeah.
So, but then the first thing I wanted to do was make a proof of concept to show how the database works. So I made a chat app. Yep. I mean, I
did it. I admit it. I made a chat app.
It's kind of like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually do think every Urbit developer should write a chat app.
Absolutely. No, I think it's great. I think it's great. So you had chat app. So Akbar has their own chat app called Pongo.
Yeah.
But I mean, it has different affordances than the other ones.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot more mobile friendly.
Yeah, it's a testing ground for like database backend, mobile only, or like mobile first. And then there's one other thing that we test with it. Oh yeah, just like integrations with other like crypto stuff.
Yeah.
So like sending money through the app, like sending invites to poker tables.
Because that's like the
kind of
main
stuff.
business of Akbar is this L2 stuff. So
I mean, we want to show people like building on top, like look how easy it is to just like spin up something that like you don't have to do DevOps for, and it can be connected to your chain stuff.
Yeah. So I actually have an architectural question that just occurred to me, which is that, most relational databases, you have to write an index for your use case, right? So it's like if I'm always going to look up a certain kind of query, you might write an index to kind of like, an index is like a phone book. It's like you're just sort of like, okay, this is how I'm going to look things up. Mm-hmm. And that oftentimes is per use case, at least in the sort of like old world. And so it would seem like, if you had a whole bunch of apps using the same database, they might would they each need to write their own index, or is that?
So the way I see that is like basically the app that makes the table. So like tables are like sort of permissioned by apps.
Okay.
And like one app like controls the table.
Okay.
And then other apps can always read from it.
Okay.
But like they might not be able to write to it. And if they want to just read from it permissionlessly, they should make their own index and like come up with their own queries. But if they want to just like use a set of supported queries that were designed by the original table producer, they can just scry that app, which is sort of the traditional way to compose
that
Urbit
makes
apps.
sense. Okay. That really makes a lot of sense. So you don't get away from the old way of doing things, which is just asking the app about it, right? So you can ask either the database or the app for that stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, from your point of view, I mean, and I've heard this, I want to get clear on it, like what do you think the benefit would be to having this kind of stuff? Like, do you think, what would it change about the development process besides
Yeah.
it just being like easier?
Yeah.
Like, how do you think it would change this kind of stuff?
Well, to start, it's just another option, right? It just gives like optionality. So a developer coming into Urbit that wants to build a product, this is sort of like a classic measure of like how useful an ecosystem is. Like anything you're looking for, if you're trying to build a app in Python, has been made.
Yeah.
And you can import that package and you can just use it.
Yeah.
So, and there's like 5 different options for every possible
there's
thing.
almost too many. There's almost too many.
Yeah. So like just even just populating that in Hoon, in Urbit is a good.
Yeah.
But then second of all, it gives you like basically like a toolkit for like product development where it's like if you are designing a new social app, oftentimes, you'll want like a relational database, right? Or like a really good key value store. And these can just be like things that are already built that you can use without having to like re-implement it yourself. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of like reinventing the wheel when you write a Gall app because we don't have these things fully fleshed out. Specifically, of course, I'm looking at people who like want to build like, the ultimate like Urbit plus Uqbar thing where like they've got some sort of like protocol on chain that they're running and then they have off chain things that they're trying to like get users to be able to do. So like say like
poker is
the archetypal example, right? Yeah.
So explain how the Uqbar poker actually works, just so people know for the...
Yeah. So you have an escrow contract sitting on chain. Players buy into an escrow contract. That escrow contract has a host assigned to it, who's basically the custodian in charge of assigning the winner the funds. They simultaneously, to initializing the escrow contract, set up a table on that host. Players are joining, and this is all off-chain. And then once the game is ready to go, they click start, and they play a full poker game run by this host provider.
Clearly
node.
off-chain.
Off-chain,
Right,
yeah, off-chain. And then at the end of the game, the host looks at the winner and awards them the tokens. Yeah, so...
this is actually such like an archetypal example
Yeah.
of like the tight coupling you can have between chain and off-chain.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And the host provider model, I think, is going to see a lot of use because, Urbit identities give you a really strong like thing that you can assign reputation to, but then even more importantly, like you can have them like stake something, and eventually. Especially with like ZK verification, you can basically have them post proofs of their behavior.
Yeah.
But even before that, you can assign reputation.
Yeah. So you think that the having some sort of just out of the box data persistence stuff would help? Would it be like, okay, if I have the chain stuff and I have the data persistence, then what you're messing around, what you're iterating on is, basically the business logic of what
which is the ideal.
Which is what you need to be iterating.
That's what lets you build like a fully featured app in a weekend.
Yeah.
It's just having
which
that,
is
all
really
that stuff.
the main benefit of Urbit, right?
Yes.
Is that you should just be able to just crank things out and get them to people and have them try it out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm very excited. It feels like that stuff is really happening a lot now.
Yeah, absolutely. The pace of development, it's like, because that is something that we've seen, right? Is that like it just takes a long time to actually iterate on this stuff, and like that, and a lot of that is the data having to rewrite the data persistence and migrate it and stuff.
And so this is like basically like the final conclusion to this thesis, which is that like we're gonna have this sort of like diaspora of app development that tries out all these different paradigms. There's going to be a landscape where like winners win. Everybody, like a rising tide raises all boats because we're like onboarding new users for specific apps. They find other apps, and people will be permissionlessly just building on top, right? It'll be a shanty town, It'll be a favela of Urbit apps, and like, I think we'll discover
walkable mixed use development.
and we'll discover like the best patterns this way.
Exactly. And I think it's like also, and I think I've said this to you before, it's like these questions about what people like, UX is like, you got to just try it, You got to just get it to the people.
You do, because like user space development is heavily influenced by user feedback.
Yeah.
And so it has to be very fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think nectar is going to help us do that. I mean, I think it already is helping us do that.
Thank you. I hope
Absolutely.
so.
Absolutely. I'm really, really impressed by what you've done so far.
Thanks.
Well, that's all my questions, man. It was great talking to you. Thank you very much.
You too.
So if anybody wants to know anything more about your work, about Akbar's work, like where can they find you?
Yeah. So we have a group, Ukbar Event Horizon.
I'll put the full path in the
there's links
show
to
notes.
that. And then ukbar.network. I'm hodzod-walrus. I host most of my apps, including Nectar, on Back Rice.
Okay.
That's my sort of like star for publishing apps. So yeah, check it out. My GitHub is not hodzod-walrus. I mostly, my professional like account is Dr. Former, Dr. Hep, FRMR,
Okay.
and I host all the repos there. And like, I'm totally open to like PRs for like Nectar and stuff like that. I also have like a social graph experiment thing going on there, and yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's great, man. And it's good to like, if there's some relational database genius is out there who like wants to jump in and tell us what we're doing wrong.
There is one here.
There we go.
Yeah.
See, they're popping out.
I've been talking to him.
That's great. All right. Well, thanks a lot, man. Great
Thank
talking.
you. You too.
Boom. That's a wrap. What'd you think?
That's awesome.
Good, right?
Yeah,
It's
thanks.
good just to BS and
Yeah, it was fun.